Live from New Delhi, you're watching GT India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Chhat Puja. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. US voters to elect the 47th President of the United States of America. Both Harris and Trump make last-minute appeal to voters to exercise their franchise. US expresses dissatisfaction over humanitarian aid situation in Gaza. Says Israel must get more aid into Gaza ahead of 30-day deadline. North Korea fires several short-range missiles toward sea east of Korean peninsula. Japan says missile fell outside its exclusive economic zone. India's External Affairs Minister to co-chair the 15th Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue with Australian Foreign Minister in Canberra. Let's get you the latest on the US presidential polls first as the race to White House nears the finish line. With US presidential elections just next day, both candidates Kamala Harris and Donald Trump made last-minute pitch to remind voters about their choice. Vote, vote, and come out for vote were the words being pitched by both Democratic and Republican candidates in their respective rallies. Former US President and Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump addressed the rally in Raleigh, North Carolina, one of the 7 battleground states, on November 4th. He made fervent appeal to voters to come out and vote.
Expression actually, but it's ours to lose. Does that make sense to you? It's ours to lose. If we get everybody out and vote, there's not a thing they can do. And you're going to say that to her. You're going to say, you've done a terrible job, you're grossly incompetent, we're not going to take it anymore. Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out. Get the hell out of here. You're out of here. Get out of here.
Democratic presidential nominee and US Vice President Kamala Harris also addressed rally in Scranton, Pennsylvania on November 4. She too made appeal to her supporters and volunteers not to lose chance to vote on November 5 if they have not done till now.
Next 24 hours, I know everyone is here, including our youngest leaders. I see you over there. I know you're not ready to vote because you look like you're about 8, but you tell the adults in your life why it's important. They vote, okay? Let's get this done.
Former independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. released a social media video urging his supporters not to vote for him on the ballot. He appealed to vote for the Republican candidate Donald Trump. He had earlier withdrawn his candidature, but the U.S. Supreme Court had denied removing his name removed from the ballot in Wisconsin and Michigan for the November 5 election.
People are asking me if they live in a red state or a blue state, should they still be voting for me? What about swing states? The answer is easy, no. No matter what state you live in, you should be voting for Donald Trump.
Both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris also addressed rallies in Pennsylvania. Trump addressed in Reading and Pittsburgh, while Harris campaigned in 5 Pennsylvania cities. Pennsylvania is the biggest prize among the battleground states, offering 19 of the 270 electoral college votes a candidate needs to win the presidency. Election offices in the U.S. have tightened security ahead of polling in the country. Hardened strategies such as active shooter drills will be undertaken based on their experience since 2020 and an increase in harassment and threats directed at election workers. The U.S. election offices have tightened security this year in anticipation of possible violence. De-escalation techniques are routinely taught to employees in many offices. Drills for active shooters and other disturbances have also been conducted. Steel doors and bulletproof glass have been added to hundreds of election offices. In an otherwise high-decibel campaigning season in the US presidential election, the all-important issue of climate change appears to have taken a backseat. Despite devastating hurricanes like Helene and Milton, no leader appeared ready with a clear, detailed vision for climate mitigation in the future. The devastation caused by storms did become a subject of a political blame game between Donald Trump and the federal government. DD India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh investigates.
The famous Miami Beach in Florida. The natural beauty of this place often hides its ecological vulnerabilities. Some 300 miles north, Tampa Bay faced the worst brunt of Hurricane Milton weeks ago. Before that, it was Cyclone Helene. Experts say that these naturally occurring storms and cyclones are becoming more intense and devastating due to climate change.
We are seeing greater number of storms forming in the Atlantic because of the higher sea surface temperatures related to climate change.
Estimates suggest damage to the tune of $300 billion by hurricanes Helene and Milton. The storms killed at least 250 people. Doubts are raised over federal preparedness to tackle these intensifying natural calamities.
A climate-wise infrastructure or resilient infrastructure or adaptable infrastructure in the US. We are essentially using that funding to essentially include old technologies, outdated technologies, which are not at all climate resilient.
Donald Trump has turned these repeated hurricanes into a subject of political attack, accusing Joe Biden's administration of inaction. Road to Asheville, a city in North Carolina's Blue Ridge Mountains polling center, lined with debris, cardboard boxes in the wave of Hurricane Helene. North Carolina is a key swing state in the US presidential election.
People are angry, and this really plays to a politics of anger, which seemingly plays towards Donald Trump, who reprises a grievance politics and an anger politics. So the idea that people feel abandoned by the federal government in terms of emergencies and economic crises, ecological crises, I think plays to a politics of anger.
During early voting, voters expressed concern over leadership on climate change issues.
The environmental situation, because we've crossed several breaking points with several of Earth's natural systems, and we may have passed the point of no return on several of the systems that are interconnected as well. So we need to hope that it's not too late already, but do everything we can at this very moment.
As an economic superpower and leading greenhouse gas emitter, the stance of the new administration on climate calamities could have far-reaching implications for both local, global climate change mitigation efforts. With camera person Jaishankar, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India from Miami.
A day before the US election, the Biden administration stepped up criticism of Israel for not doing enough to improve humanitarian conditions in Gaza. The US State Department called the results not good enough, as a 30-day deadline looms for Israeli officials to meet certain requirements or risk potential restrictions on military assistance. The message was conveyed by US Secretary of State Antony Blinken to Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant during a phone call. The Secretary emphasized the importance of ending the conflict in Gaza and bringing all of the hostages home, as well as planning post-conflict situation.
As of today, the situation has not significantly turned around. We have seen an increase in some measurements. We've seen an increase in the number of crossings that are open, but just if you look at the stipulated recommendations in the letter, those have not been met. We're not at the end of the period yet. They have not. If you look at what we ultimately judge, what we ultimately judge on, which is the results on the ground, the results are not good enough today. They certainly do not have a passing grade. They have failed. I said they have failed to implement all of the things that we recommend in that letter. Now, that said, we are not at the end of the 30-day period. It's not the end of the semester. We don't hand out grades in the middle.
Meanwhile, as the world leaders continue to urge immediate ceasefire in Gaza, reportedly the United States and Saudi Arabia are discussing a potential security agreement that wouldn't involve a broader deal with Israel. Sources say the agreement under discussion is not a full defense treaty. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the White House want to reach the agreement before President Joe Biden leaves office in January. Further, a day after Israel notified the United Nations of ending decades-old ties with UNRWA, UN Chief Antonio Guterres has said that Israel's ban on its operations will lead to the collapse of aid in Gaza. He added that UN lawyers are reviewing the move. However, the end of the 1967 agreement is imminent.
Secretary General, he continues to believe that the work of UNRWA is performing the occupied Palestinian territory is essential, and that there is no alternative to UNRWA as we see it. If the law is fully implemented, right, and Israel makes it impossible for UNRWA to continue to operate, this will have no effect on Israel's responsibility to provide for the population, and any failure to provide the necessary support to the population will be Israel's responsibility. We're obviously, our lawyers and UNRWA's lawyers are also taking a closer look at the letter.
The United States, too, has opposed the Israeli legislation on UNRWA and was studying the Israeli letter to the UN to learn what the implications might be. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has for years called for UNRWA to be dismantled, accusing it of anti-Israeli incitement. North Korea fired an unidentified ballistic missile toward the sea east of Korean peninsula. The launch was Kim Jong-un's first weapons test since being accused of sending soldiers to Russia. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said its second launch in days and just hours before Americans vote for a new president. The Japanese government also said North Korea fired what could be a ballistic missile. The launch came just hours after US and South Korean defense chiefs called on Pyongyang to withdraw its troops, warning that North Korean soldiers in Russian uniforms were being deployed for possible action against Ukraine. The launch comes just days after Pyongyang said it tested an intercontinental ballistic missile, prompting condemnation from the South, the United States and Japan, with three countries conducting a joint military exercise in response. Tropical storm Rafael, the 18th named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season, formed on Monday as a tropical depression strengthened over the Caribbean. Rafael is forecast to intensify into a hurricane on Tuesday before entering the Gulf of Mexico, where conditions will trend less conducive for the system to hold that intensity later this week. A hurricane warning has been issued for the Cayman Islands, while hurricane watch remains in place for parts of Cuba. Meanwhile, Jamaica is under a tropical storm warning. Hurricane Oscar made a landfall in Cuba around the same time as the blackout in a country already suffering from severe shortages of food, fuel and medicine. Authorities said they had evacuated more than 66,000 Cubans from far east in Cuba ahead of predicted heavy rains and flooding early this week. The aftermath of the devastating floods in Valencia has led to a swift and coordinated response by Spanish authorities as the city works to recover from one of the worst flooding events in recent years. Hundreds of military emergency workers are searching shopping centers, garages and underground car parks to find out more victims of floods in the Valencia region that have killed at least 218 people. Spain is suffering its worst flooding disaster in recent history, probably deadliest to hit Europe since 1970s. Authorities in Valencia extended travel restrictions for another 2 days. Thousands of people from Indonesia's popular tourist island of Flores have been evacuated after Mount Lewotobi Laki-Laki erupted, killing at least 10 people. Mount Lewotobi Laki-Laki, a 1,703-meter twin volcano located in eastern Indonesia, erupted shortly before midnight on Sunday, forcing authorities to evacuate several villages. Fiery lava and rocks hit the nearest settlements around 4 kilometers from the crater, burning and damaging residents' houses. Indonesia's disaster agency warned of potential flash floods and cold lava flows in the coming days. Indonesia sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, an area of high seismic activity atop multiple tectonic plates. And still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Celebrating a rich heritage of Buddhism, Preparations for Chhat Puja at Ganga Ghat in full swing. Kannada short film Sunflowers were the first ones to know heads to Oscars 2025.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Chhat Bharatwaj, and India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, who is in Australia on the first leg of his two-nation tour, visited Australia's humanitarian logistics capability warehouse for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief supplies to Pacific. Disaster relief in Indo-Pacific is an emerging element of bilateral ties. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar appreciated Australia's support for delivery of relief material to Papua New Guinea in June 2024. HADR has also been an important element of Quad endeavours. Earlier on Monday, Jaishankar inaugurated the Consulate General of India in Brisbane. The new consulate in Brisbane is India's fourth in Australia alongside existing consulates in Sydney, Melbourne and Perth. It will contribute to strengthening India's ties with Queensland state, promoting trade, fostering educational linkages and serving the diaspora. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar will also co-chair the 15th Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue with Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong in Canberra. He will also deliver the keynote address at the inaugural session of the second Raisina Down Under to be held in the Australian Parliament House. And to celebrate the rich heritage of Buddhism, Indian government in collaboration with the International Buddhist Confederation is hosting the first Asian Buddhist Summit on November 5th to 6th in the national capital. The summit themed Role of Buddha Dhamma in Strengthening Asia will feature esteemed Sangha leaders, scholars and practitioners from across the continent, fostering dialogue and understanding while addressing contemporary challenges faced by the Buddhist community. The President of India, Draupadi Murmu, will attend the event as chief guest. Chhat Puja, one of the most auspicious Hindu festivals, celebrates the worship of sun god begins today with religious fervor and gaiety. The 4-day-long Chhat Puja involves fasting, bathing in rivers or ponds and offering prayers to the setting and the rising sun. The festival is celebrated as a way of showing thanks to sun god for sustaining life on earth and seeking his benevolence for prosperity, health and happiness. The energy of the sun is believed to cure diseases, increase lifespan and bring peace. By worshipping the sun and Chhati Maiya, devotees pray for divine protection for their families. The 7th International Solar Alliance Conference kicked off in New Delhi on Monday. A total of 95 member countries and several global partners are participating in the 3-day event. India, a founding member of the alliance, has been elected unopposed as the president of ISA, with France serving as the co-president. Our correspondent Debyendu Mondal brings us more details from the event.
The 7th International Solar Alliance Conference was inaugurated on Monday morning by India's Minister of New and Renewable Energy, Prahlad Joshi. This marks another significant step in the global effort towards clean energy. Attended by 29 ministers from various countries, the conference will see deliberations on how to accelerate the adoption of solar power and scale up initiatives in renewable energy. The ISA, since its inception, has aimed to unite countries, primarily those in the tropical regions, to promote solar energy as a sustainable and affordable solution.
India's election to the president post is the testament to the substantial and impactful work of the country. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi has been doing over the years for the global good in advancing the solar energy adoption across the globe. India and France, along with the member countries, will aim to raise our ambition and promise to make this decade the count as we usher in a fresh wave of energy.
India's commitment to solar power is evident with massive projects like the world's largest solar parks in the country. The election of India as ISA's president further cements the nation's pivotal role in shaping global solar policy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has championed numerous clean energy projects, including solar irrigation pumps and extensive solar rooftop programs. France, co-president of ISA, congratulated India for being elected as president. It also spoke about the deep shared commitment of India and France in the renewable energy sector and praised India for the initiatives it has taken in this sector.
We are very proud to keep on co-chairing the ISA, which continuously proves to be a great success, thanks to the significant political commitment of our Indian partners and the member state of ISA. We have been able to implement very concrete initiatives in order to promote and do many things in solar energy.
The delegates would dwell on innovation and collaboration in this sector over the next 3 days, with outcomes being released on the final day of the conference.
With India now being elected as the president of the International Solar Alliance, it perhaps has the opportunity now to steer the global conversation on solar energy. And of course, with the 7th Assembly of the International Solar Alliance, which is setting ambitious goals and targets, it perhaps would be the new stepping stone for energy transition across the world. With camera person Naveen, this is Dibyendu Mondal from New Delhi for DD India.
Delhi's air quality remained in the very poor category for the 7th consecutive day on Tuesday. According to the Central Pollution Control Board, a majority of the pollution hotspots in the national capital remained in the severe category throughout the day. Prevailing unfavorable meteorological conditions of low wind speeds in the day and calm winds at night kept the AQI levels hovering near the severe category for the last 2 days. The particulate matter pollution was 3 times higher than the national prescribed standard in the city. Taking a note on the growing pollution in the city, the Supreme Court has taken very seriously the fact that the ban on burning firecrackers during Diwali has not been implemented. The Supreme Court has issued a notice to the police commissioner and asked him to file an affidavit and explain why this ban was not implemented. The hearing of this case will now be held on November 11. The Film and Television Institute of India's award-winning Kannada short film Sunflowers were the first ones to know has qualified for the Oscars 2025 in the live-action short film category. This milestone follows a series of accolades, including winning first prize in the prestigious Last F selection at the Cannes Film Festival earlier this year, which brought international attention to the film. Set in the rustic village, the movie revolves around an elderly woman who disrupts her community by stealing a rooster, leading to the disappearance of sunlight and sending the village into chaos. To restore balance, a prophecy is invoked and the woman's family is exiled, embarking on a journey to retrieve the rooster. The quest captures not just the desperation of the characters, but also the deep-rooted beliefs of the community, reflecting the rich tapestry of Indian folk traditions. Some business news now. European and US stock markets dipped while the dollar slid Monday as investors determined themselves for a coin toss US presidential election, an interest rate decision and expected Chinese stimulus measures. Oil prices rallied more than 2% after 8 members of the OPEC Plus group of producers said they would extend supply cuts until the end of next month. They had been delaying output hikes on worries about slowing demand in China and the United States. While Asian markets gained, tracking a positive lead from Wall Street ahead of the weekend, European markets were mostly lower and US markets wobbled. In sports news, Pakistan suffered a narrow 2-wicket defeat in the opening one-day international against Australia at the iconic Melbourne cricket ground on Monday. Cummins led Australia to victory, guiding his team through a tense chase. While chasing despite promising starts from Matthew and Jake Fraser-McGurk, it was Smith and Inglis who steadied the innings with solid 85-run partnership, ultimately securing the win in 33.3 overs. Earlier, after being put into bat, Pakistan struggled to adapt from their Test cricket mindset, managing to post only 203 runs. The next ODI is scheduled for November 8 at the Adelaide Oval. That's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Chhat Bharadwaj from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.